Welcome, John. Good to have you, brother.
Dave Ramsey, an honor. Thanks for having me.
Man, it is so cool. Now, your story, I'm kind of one of the things we do with our listeners is I don't bait them. I don't say, well, you got to come to seminar. We don't go tell you the good stuff. We don't do that. But your story is so riveting, it almost feels unfair to not bait them. But you make a pretty bold statement when you speak. You say, you're introduced, when somebody's introducing you, they say, John O'Leary, expected to die, now teaching others how to truly live. It's almost that country song, 3 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu, right? And so tell everybody just a little bit about why you say that.
Yeah, and even in that song, it's about a guy who almost died.
Yeah.
Showing the rest of us how to live. I would remind your listeners, and I remind myself in the mirror every morning, Dave, don't confuse being out of bed with being alive. And don't confuse having your eyes open for seeing, and don't confuse having your ears open for really listening. Most of us...
What's that saying that William Wallace said, all men die, but some men never live. Is that right. The saying? Yeah.
That's exactly right. And our challenge is for all the men listening, and all the ladies listening, and everybody in between to really live. And as a young boy, I had the kind of experience that taught me both how frail life is and how precious life is. The story we get to share, Dave, ultimately is not about me. It's not a brag story. I think folks will leave the SMART Conference not thinking of John O'Leary. They're going to leave thinking about their life. They're going to think about their finances, their marriages, their parenting, and how they can do all of that a little bit better.
Yeah. Maybe we don't spoil the whole story. Maybe we just say that as a child, you were almost killed.
As a child, I was almost killed.
By a freak accident.
Exactly right.
And the people that intersected your lives as you came back from that, and the change in your spirit and your family's spirit and everything around you and your view of life from that changed the way you look at everything permanently.
Always. And the lessons that I learned as a child, yes, were through my eyes, but it's watching the people around me. So my brother Jim, for instance, is one of the incredible heroes of my accident. This freak thing that takes place. Jim O'Leary, 17-year-old boy, shows up in such a manner that he changes his entire life, and in doing so changes mine. And then my mother and father follow that same model where they changed. They showed up not in fear, but in faith and in love and boldness. And then I followed their model, and it's this incredible journey through 5 months in hospital and years in surgery and therapy afterwards. And as a little boy, just taking the lessons from those around him of probably really what Jesus looked like in action. Selfless, servant-like attitude, and what it can do for those around us.
Some of the people in the hospital and the things that they meant and how they just become uber special people in your life because your brother saves your life, and then literally, repeatedly, they saved your life in the hospital over time.
That's right. And it's going back to the well, Dave. It's my favorite story, and I will not be sharing this in Dallas, so I think we can go there today. When you have the kind of accident that I had, you have to have a certain kind of therapy every day. It's extremely excruciating. And these teachers, my nurses, would come into my room. I had one in particular, this large African-American gentleman. He looked just like Apollo Creed, but his name was Nurse Roy. So just imagine this huge, well-built athlete coming into your room. He would unstrap me from the bed, pick me up into his arms. My little legs would dangle between his. I'm only 9 years old. I can't bear any weight. I have no muscle mass at that time. I wasn't always the hulking figure you see in front of you today. It took a lot of working out to get to this point. So he comes in every day, and the encouragement that he whispers is, boy, you are going to walk again. You might as well get used to it. And then he would say, and I'll walk with you. I'll walk with you. And he every single morning on the way from my bedroom back to this bandage-changing tub, he's whispering this encouragement that what I'm looking at today is not the end of it. That this is the start of it. And someday he's casting the vision that I will walk again. And so I've been blessed to have these kinds of volunteers, these kind of servants, these kind of parents around me, showing me what real love looks like in action.
So a burn accident, which is what this was that we're talking about, folks, is, I understand, I have no idea personally because I've never experienced it, but I understand it's one of the most excruciating things, pain-wise, that people can go through. Do you have, since you were 9 years old, do you have much recollection of that level of pain?
Yeah, if I asked you your favorite childhood birthday party, from age 7 on, you remember it. Or if I ask you the worst moment in your life when you're 8 or 9, you remember it. So I think a moment like when you're burned, like I was, it's something you remember. I think that treatment and therapy and surgeries afterwards, you remember. I think when your mom and dad leave your room and you are an upper class spoiled kid and now they're leaving you and you're all by yourself, you remember it. So these are memories that I will never forget. They were memories that used to, in some regards, haunt me. But now they liberate me. They free me. I speak about it. I'm on fire with it. And I'm glad and grateful every day to God that I have these memories.
Well, it's certainly lifted thousands and thousands of people. I mean, you've spoken with clients, a lot of corporate clients like Lego, Southwest Air, many, many more. And people have you come in because your story says, hey, not only did I survive, but I learned to live. And everyone needs to not only survive,
That's right,
but learn to live. And that's why we wanted you to be part of this, because by the time folks have sat in there and learned about parenting, and they've learned about marriage, and they learned about money, and then towards the end of the day on the SMART conference, here comes John, and you go out of there just, doing a Rocky move, the Rocky music's playing when you leave.
Right.
After you hear John's talk, that's what happens. Everybody stands up. We need to just go ahead and cue Rocky at that point during the event. Not now, James, not now, but during the event. So my guest is John O'Leary, nationally known speaker, fabulous story. And we're talking about his appearance with us on the SMART conference. It's March the 28th at Dallas. We got about 7,000 folks at the Verizon Theater. It is not yet sold out, but it's close. Oh, by the way, today only, John O'Leary Day, we're knocking $10 off the tickets. They're normally $69. They're $59 if you buy them today. Next 24 hours, today, at DaveRamsey.com. This is for an all-day event in Dallas, March the 28th, called the SMART Conference. DaveRamsey.com or call 888-22-PEACE, 888-227-3223. We're talking about John's personal story, which is what he speaks from. He's an overcomer, to say the least. Was burned as a child, not expected to live, is actually introduced as expected to die, now teaching others how to truly live. And so that's what we're dealing with. And you were talking at the break, you and I were talking about the sense of entitlement in our culture. And when you go through something like you're 9 years old, you're on your deathbed, your parents had a choice of whether they were going to, enable, and just cry, which is what I would want to do if it was one of mine. It's what you'd do if it was one of yours. I mean, you got a big heart. And yet somehow your mom and dad decided that this experience was not going to define you, and if it did, it was going to define you in a positive way. And they were pretty tough.
Yes, it's a beautiful way of saying it. My mom and dad got the call that I was burned. They come to the hospital, of course, immediately afterwards. They're just a few minutes behind me, and my mom walks in. You got to understand, Dave, she's walking into a child that she left an hour earlier to run one errand, and she's got a 17-year-old boy home with me. She walks into this room, and I'm laying there tied down to this bed with no clothes on. It's all been burnt off, no skin on. It's a total mess. It's 100% burn. She comes over to me. I can't imagine what she was feeling or what she was thinking and how she really felt in her gut. But the first thing she said was, I love you. I love you. And I remember looking at my mom and saying to her, Mama, am I going to die? And when I asked the question, I knew her answer already. That's why I asked it. I knew she would say, baby, you're fine. I knew she'd say, honey, we're going to get you out of here and get you a chocolate shake on the way home. That's what I knew was coming my way. Entitlement. Instead, what I got, though, was my mother taking my right hand in hers, patting my bald head with her other hand, and saying to me, baby, look at me. Do you want to die? Your choice, not mine. And I looked up at my mom, surprised, and I said, Mama, I do not want to die. And her response was, good, baby. Then take the hand of God. You walk the journey with him, but baby, you look at me. You fight like you never fought before. And on January the 17th, almost 3 decades ago, we made a covenant, Dave, to fight forward. Nothing was going to come easy. Nothing did come easy that first day or the 5 months that followed or the years really subsequently. But the commitment was made to fight on, to be responsible for our decisions again. And not only was she hard that first day, Mom's hard. I think she should be a guest on how to be a mean parent. I think that's a best-selling book in the making already. Mean parenting works.
Love the mean parenting style, yeah.
But it does work. There's nothing easy about being a good parent. My first night home, and you got to understand also this is a miracle story. So the first night home, it should never have happened other than God's grace. So we're home, the party's going on, the party goers leave. Now it's my brother, my 4 sisters, my mom and dad, and I are having dinner. Mom makes my favorite dinner. It's au gratin and potatoes. So I'm a strange kid back then. I look at the food. It looks great. It smells awesome. Everything's perfect, except I don't have fingers, so I can't hold a fork. So I'm just looking at the food, and nothing's going on. So my favorite sister, Amy, I'm sure she's listening right now. Amy leans over. She grabs a fork. She grabs some potatoes, and she starts moving it toward my mouth. And then mean Mom looks over and says, Amy, you dropped that fork. If he's hungry, he'll feed himself. And I remember at some point in the night flipping over the plate, not being able to eat, ruining dinner, she did. But by the end of it, a couple of the bites somehow haltingly had made their way from the plate or from the table or from wherever they were, slowly and painstakingly into my mouth. And that was the beginning, not just to not die, but to really start living again.
To be able to feed yourself for the rest of your life with no fingers.
That's right.
Wow.
Great, and just to be clear,
I was a tough dad, but I don't know if I could do that. I was a tough dad. I mean, I made our kids work. I made them safe. I mean, I was not a mean dad, but I mean, that is such an act of love because she was building in you ability and dignity to use for the rest of your life that she's saying to you, you can do anything.
Absolutely. It was a gift.
You can do anything.
Back then, I viewed it as rude and mean and everything else negative, but it was an absolute liberating gift.
Yeah. When we don't teach our kids to do things and that it's up to them to do them, we take their dignity, don't we?
Ooh.
Wow, that's powerful. That is so cool. John O'Leary is my guest. He will be speaking at the SMART conference. You have to come and hear the story. You will leave with the Rocky music on, with your hands in the air going, I can do anything. And John, I don't want this to sound wrong, but there's something about a story like yours, and I don't want to say this improperly because it'll sound insulting, but that you kind of have one of those stories that is, if I can do it, then shut up, you can too. Not mean like that, but I mean, your story is, I can do this, and so, you can do whatever you need to do. You can do anything. Is what I come away when I listen to your story. I'm like, I got no gripes. Whatever my little problem is, I got no little problem. Get with it. And it just jacked me up, and I'm ready to run through a block wall, and gives you that kind of energy to know I can do it. I can do it. Because John, with the things he's been through, he does it, and and to get to share that story in the way that you share it as a well-trained, world-class speaker, when you deliver it on the stage, it gives people that ability. It is real inspiration, is what it comes down to. So what are the lessons when you do an event that you take away? When you go and speak to people, you must hear that they must feel like that it's okay to come up and say anything to you afterwards.
Yes. I become an underpaid counselor at that point, which is the great gift of our work, Dave.
Yeah.
To be able to share a little bit of your story, to step aside, turn off the microphone, and greet people one-to-one when you do no talking, and you listen and you sit back and you get to say things like, tell me more, and listen to what is really taking place in the marketplace, in households, at dinner tables around the world. That's what turns me on about speaking, not the brag story, but really about what other men and women are doing with it in their lives and how God works through all of their experiences for a purpose greater than we can imagine when we're staring at flesh and divorce and struggles and debt and everything else that weighs up against us. He uses it all, but we got to be willing to say yes to it.
And every one of us got a story.
Everybody's got a story. Usually it's just not the one we're telling others, but everybody's got a story.
Yeah, we keep them pretty close, usually, pretty close to the vest. Those cards are held. I was with a guy, an author, another speaker, and a lady came up to him and said, you probably hear this all the time, but you did this, and it changed my life. And he said, I hadn't heard your story.
Mm-hmm.
Because your story's different. And every one of them are different. And yet they all have this theme. It's what the writers call a story arc, isn't there? There's a disaster, and then there's a phoenix happening, a rising from the ashes, and there's something that God takes the most horrific thing in your life and changes it to be a blessing to you and to others in the midst of it, and you're a walking embodiment of that. We appreciate you, man.
And your work, brother, is changing lives for the kingdom for all time. So I'm honored to be a part of this today.
Guys, you got to come hear John O'Leary. You can look him up on YouTube. You can look him up. You can follow him on Twitter. At Rising Above John is his Twitter handle, at Rising Above John. Check that out. And Rising Above, he's the president of that company. And you can hear this guy speak with us at the SMART Conference coming up. Again, it's John O'Leary Day, so $10 off for the next 24 hours on your SMART tickets. And you're smart if you get a ticket. That's how that works. John, thank you, brother.
David, thank you.
Honor, man. Very cool. All right, this is the Dave Ramsey Show.